And we are live. Hello, good evening. Wherever you might be in the diaspora, you've got your Omi Inca 7 live here coming to you for Blog Talk Omi Inca 7 and for Oracle Divination Network on the Blog Talk show. But we are now featuring Organic Broadcaster, and I am Omi Inca 8, and I'd like to welcome each and every one of you by giving you the greetings. I will leave you as you came with the right hand of fellowship, and I thank you so much for joining me this evening. And we're going to be talking about a topic that is most needed for those African American families who have children in the special education department in the public school. Listen up. Here's your opportunity to set up your own parent resource center in your home and aid and assist those families who have children that have special needs, who have differentiated learning, and you can be a part of being an advocate, a co-parent. That's right. You can get your credentials in co-parenting facilitation. Most of you might know about co-parenting facilitation if you've ever gone through the court system and gone through a divorce. And most of the 50 states, they require you now, if you are going to go to a divorce where there are children involved, you have to learn how to co-parent and how to work with visitation rights for those children. So you're going to have to learn all over again how to actually have visitation rights with your child, whether you be the spouse, female, or the male. The court is going to recommend that you go through co-parenting training. Now, I've gone through co-parenting training, and I'm very familiar with the procedure. I've even helped a large amount of young people get their credentials through an actual judge who came in and taught a portion of the class and certificated each of us by stamping the CEUs and continuing education hours on our transcript. Now, the reason why I'm coming at you is because I've just finished a whole training series that will also work with you in learning about your family rights as a parent of a special needs child. You know the old IDEA law, the 94-142, the Oracle number 11, where you have to learn those articles, and your 504, your 457 for infants and early intervention infants. These are some laws that you're probably most familiar with, and I'm only just echoing in the wind. For some of you, you're very much attuned to these laws and you are proficient. But for those of you who are just coming on to the game and would like to learn more about how do you advocate for your child, and you know you're going to have to advocate once you sign that child off to the public school to have them create an IEP, their individual plan of study as to how and what they're going to learn. You have to make sure you are still in your child's life. You have to still be advocating, and you have to go down to the office to find out about his testing, what was his diagnosis, what is what are the procedures he's going to be receiving, and you're going to have to advocate as a mediator, making sure that the child gets what the IEP instructs him to get. Don't ever let anyone give you a boilerplate IEP of somebody else's outline plan. You must establish your own outline plan to be administered in the least restrictive environment. And that means if that child can be placed back into the mainstream and you only want him pulled out for certain subjects, you can request that. Listen, parents, know that once you give your consent for the child to be pulled out in small groups, then you must understand if they're not put back in the mainstream, they will not have access to a Core 40 curriculum, nor will they graduate with a genuine Core 40 diploma. They will graduate with a certificate. You must know that. And if you don't know that, you have to become acquainted with that, because you will be sadly mistaken that your child will be graduating with a diploma when in fact it is a certificate. So you must know the laws. You must go down and read up on 504. Go to your local educational department, ask them for an actual outline of the laws. They will give it to you. Now, what about starting your own family resource center in your home? Well, let me tell you my story. I found out through many advocates that they were running their own parent resource center from their home. And I asked them, how did you do that there? And because I was working with the CHAD chapter members, and I actually ran a support group for CHAD chapter mothers and fathers, I found out that they were heavily involved in their child's learning, that it didn't just stop after high school. They had plans. They had plans to transition him from high school to the workforce or to college. Yes, special needs children can go to junior college. Yes, they can. And they can have assistance, and they can have as much help as they need. You need to know this. Don't just let your child go through the motions, graduate, and have no transition plan on file. By law, by the age of 14, you must have a transition plan on file. Plans of how you plan to transition your child from high school to the workforce or to college or to technical programs. Now, you know, with the certificate, it does not say that they have a core 40. They can't just walk into college and do an assessment test and say, here's my ACT scores, here's my SAT score. You have to do something where you take intermediate level classes that you're not given credit for. Those are only preparatory classes to get your child ready for college. But if you're at home building a parent resource center, you can have help. Yes, you can, parents. You can get the help from the government that will give you educational departments that will give you books and instruction of how to go about setting up your own parent resource center. And you could bid on these contracts that they give out every year. And you can apply for funding to help pay for setting up your parent resource center. And you can uniquely brand your own parent resource center according to the needs that you have. If it's for the Mexican child, you can say Mexican Parent Resource Center. If it's for the Japanese child, you can say Japanese Parent Resource Center. If it's for the indigenous child, you can say Indigenous Child Parent Resource. And if it's happened to be for the African American Black child, you can say African American Black Child Resource Center. And there will be no harm come to you about being diversified. Why aren't you including other races? You can specifically brand your parent resource to the needs, down to the dime. Yes, you can. And there won't be anything said about it. Now, I am the guru of working with parent resource centers. Yes, I have ran a parent resource center and operated primarily for the Hispanics and African American families. I know how this program works. I've sat on board with people as they wrote their grants and answer RFPs to get an actual grant for their parent resource center. And there were also people like myself. We only received the technical assistant, and that technical assistant allowed me to train parents and teachers and to create software from that training that is marketable to help others to become trained in understanding the laws of special education, the differentiated learning of children, how to cut through bureaucracy and the red tape that you're going to go through in order to get services for your special and differentiated needs child. And if you're advocating for a relative, you still can become a surrogate advocate. That means you are advocating for somebody else's child. But it's very vital that you should know that it is available to you. First of all, I want to talk to you about the co-parenting. That is something that the government and various different states demanded. He demanded that you go and learn something about co-parenting separately from being married and co-parenting alone. And there are classes out there. We work with a judge that actually offer classes that they can actually stamp off on that you've completed the necessary credentials to meet the requirement from the judge, because the judge is going to put a court order if you go through a divorce that you must take co-parenting classes to learn how to parent your child alone now that you're no longer married. These are very valuable courses. I've taught the early childhood classes at the junior college. I've taught them independently. I taught them abroad and overseas. And now I wanted to explain to you that co-parenting classes are a little bit different from child development. It teaches you the best practices for children, and it's a co-parenting credential that you'll receive and not just an early childhood license. Now, I think that parents need to learn something about the family as well as the child. So I believe in family life education. I believe not only in just the child, the infant, but also in the marriage and the family. So I'm looking at the whole institution of the family, the family of science, and looking at how we must govern the training for couples who are no longer going to be married, how we must train them individually to parent alone, and how we can help those parents get the necessary skills they need to help their children who might have been taken out of the home and now they want to do reunification of the child, and they must meet the criteria of the court. There's a number of child development courses that they require for you to take in order to be able to receive your child back home if that child has been taken out because of abuse. Now, I'm speaking to somebody out there today who definitely needs to hear what the courts are saying. They're already ordered to go to early childhood classes. They're already ordered in order to get their child back. They must complete certain classes, and that could be early childhood development or co-parenting resolution classes. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to pass these classes. If you have been any kind of parent, a lot of this information that you will be taught is actually mother with that you will know from instinct. Now, I talked to you about the fact that I want you to know a little bit about the fact that you can set your own center up in your home. You have got to assess your area, what your needs are. You've got to go out in the community. You got to do marketing surveys. Who has special needs children in the community? What are their needs? You have to have a team of committee to go out, a welcoming committee, to go out in the community to welcome those families right as they get out of the hospital. So you might even want to go over to the hospital to assess how many parents are getting out of the hospital who've just delivered a special needs child who needs services immediately. Now, once you acclimate them to the services you have in the community, you might want to rent a space or go to the library to have your welcoming team welcome these families and to alert them and inform them about what your services are. You might also want to offer some workshops and symposiums and seminars about the various different laws of education, parenting skills, and parenting rights. As you know, you do have some rights, but you have got to be acclimated to these rights so you know exactly what you're fighting for. There are a whole team of women out there who have support groups. You might even want to formalize a support group where you can meet up with these women to talk about your issues that are so uniquely comparable. And you have to understand that we are trying to get more and more people acclimated to starting their own parent information centers from their home. I'm like a resource center. I can provide you with materials you need to set up your parent resource center. I can also guide you into the system to tell you where you have to go to get this information, to get resource material. Because now you want resource material either through digital downloading or hard copies that are mailed to you that you can disseminate to your community, to the population of people that you're serving. If you're serving Hispanic families, you want to go and get a survey on how many Hispanic families are there in your community that have special needs. What are their various different disabilities? What acclamations do they need? And what accommodations do they need? You must also alert the parents and understanding how disability benefits work, how to apply for their disability decision letter so that a lawyer can accompany them into court to fight for their child's disability benefits. Now, what does this disability benefit do? Well, it allows your child to continue to receive benefits even after the age of 22. Now, if they're receiving benefits, it also outlines for them exactly what their rights are. Can they go on to college? Can it be paid for out of their benefits? Now, you must understand that this disability must go on for more than a year. It must continue after a year, and you must bring in a representative to speak on the child's behalf. Or you can advocate for them, or you can go and obtain an attorney to fight for your child's benefit. There's a lot of bureaucracy that you have to cut through when you're trying to raise up an adult disabled individual who is going to continue on in the school system and needs to have benefits and have his classes paid for. So there's a lot that you'll have to learn, mothers, as you go to workshops, symposiums, and seminars. You'll be highly trained and proficient to even go back and apply for a job with the government under Section 8H. Now that you're trained and skilled, you can offer your service to the government. You're an advocate. And once you become an advocate, you don't have to be a member of the bar, or you don't have to be a licensed attorney to go into the courtroom to advocate on behalf of someone else or your child. So carrying the name of advocate gives you the right to represent that parent and represent that child, or to represent some other significant parent's child. You want to go to many workshops and get as many skills as possible. And there are a lot of government programs that will allow you to go and take classes, become credentialed, get familiar with all of the IDEA law, Section 504. And you know that a lot of parents were going out trying to get benefits for their children with attention deficit disorder, and it was falling up under other health impaired. It didn't qualify for a label of disability because it was an other health impaired. And a lot of parents could not get anything a couple of years ago. I understand that things have changed for them. They are now applying under the 504 to get benefits for their child that has attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity and without it. And I want you to understand that parents getting early childhood training is one of the best things you can do. It'll help you to learn all the ages and stages of a child, and it also help you to fight for the rights of the most services your child needs in the least restrictive environment. You can make sure that your child is pulled out for certain subjects, and other subjects he's in the mainstream. You can fight for those types of laws, making sure your IEP is not boilerplate and you have uniquely designed a plan that's specifically for your child and not one that's been used over and over again with somebody else's child. Now, I'm telling you these things because I want you to understand if you're shut in and you have a disabled child and you know a lot about how to cut through bureaucracy and how to become an advocate, I suggest you become more than an advocate. I suggest you run your own parent resource center and help other people in the community and the neighborhood, and actually allow the government to let you run this program under submitting your RFBP for grant funding to assist you. Now, you don't always get the grants, and if you don't, you might get technical assistance to help you. And some people still run their parent centers from their home. Now, but I want you to do as much reading as you can on how to operate a parent information center, how to set up your board. Who are the people that should sit on your board? Quite naturally, you want some parents of children that have special needs to sit on your board. You don't just want to be running a board with all people who are regular ed. You must represent the people you're going to serve, and that's special education and special needs families should sit on that board with you, helping you to make decisions on how are you going to run your workshops. How are you going to run your conferences every year? All these things have to be done. Then you have to have a welcoming committee to go into the committee that are actually leaving specialized gifts for the family, letting them know we're in the neighborhood. We're here to help you, and we want you to know that the services are free to you because these are all government services that have been actually bequeathed to the agency so that you can extend to the family. Now, if you are designated to help African American family, that's who you strictly are going to be helping. No one's going to come up to you and say, we want you to have diversity. You must go over to the Hispanic area. No, because your mission statement says you strictly are going to service the African Americans. Now, you don't want to deviate from that because you are answering RFPs and you're telling them who you're servicing. Now, it's very important for you to be seen in the community by African American families so everyone will know who you are and who you're representing. So you got to be seen out in the community and go to the conferences and workshops and various different opening houses that they're inviting you to so you can let them know, pass out your card, I'm going to be servicing African American. Here are the features that we offer in our particular establishment. Excuse me. Throat is very dry. But it can be a fun thing to run parent information centers. It can be a fun thing to run a chapter of CHAD, attention deficit disorder. It could be a great opportunity for you to run these things, but you have to be knowledgeable. So you're going to have to get out and go to conferences, become a part of membership, wherever there are special needs issues, especially if you are in the process of introducing yourself. You might want to put out an actual RFP, you might want to put out an alert and introducing yourself to the newspaper, who you are, and kind of services you offer in the newspaper. Tell a little bit about your background and yourself, and let somebody know that these are the things I'll be offering to the community. And I would like to invite you out for a workshop, symposium, invite speakers to speak and bring in the community by having them come in and listen to some child development specialist who is credentialed, who may have written books or have something to talk about families. Now, we want to also consider that parents have regular needs children too. So when you're offering these various different workshops, make sure you include information about regular ed students, not just special needs children, because the parent will also need to know how to parent in general. Now, I'm going to also say that this could be a very fun experience. I had spent over 5 days concentrating on all the laws of special education, all the procedures for how to handle the different age groups, looking at how to service parents who are transitioning out of the hospital, who've just had a special needs child. How do we service them? How do we get our flyers in their hand? How do we talk to them about the services that we're going to render? How do we invite them to attention deficit disorder discussion, something that might intrigue them? How do we offer materials to that hospital on various topics about differentiated learning? Well, we might even want to go partner with that hospital to have a small section set up on library books for special needs children so that parents can go and get literature immediately before they leave the hospital. But you must understand that this is a brand new thing for African American. Um, we just got informed that we can have our own unique parent information resource center. And we're not feeling bad anymore about it because the majority of our children that are African American are in special education classes. Now, I will say some of it by default. You have to get on the bandwagon and say, hey, we have been overlooking the fact that our children may be language deficit and not learning disabled at all. We might want to suggest that our children be reassessed and retested and work with the English as a second language department more closely to make sure that they're screening our children for literacy deficits and language deficits so that they can get the proper care they need in the ELL classes instead of being misdiagnosed and placed in special ed. That is the area that I'm working very heavily on to talk to the principals and allow me to come in to do a session with training their rotating individuals who are working on a team to specifically look for those children who might have language deficits and might have been misplaced in special ed by accident. So we can deplete some of those numbers in special ed and get the children properly placed in the language department and get the right services for them so they can transition back into the mainstream. That is the area that I'm pushing very heavily because I want these principals to know that they're being observed. If you keep getting these large top heavy numbers with Black African American boys being put in to special ed, knowing that they have a high IQ and that they tested well during the IQ, but you just labeled them behavior disorder, but you don't know what the norm is for normal behavior. So how can you justify a disability under BD? So we as African American are coming more heavier and stronger on you about re-evaluating properly the African American language misfit children who might have been placed there because of Ebonics. And Ebonics is a regularized code, so it is a language. You cannot punish an African American child for the rest of their life by putting them in learning disability when it should be language deficit. That's what we're going to break through and get these children properly reassessed and placed back in the mainstream. And that is the area I went back purposely and got an endorsement in English as a second language or English as a new language. It is a new language for our African American children, because they do not have Orthodox language as their first language. They have Ebonics as their first language, and they haven't been introduced to Orthodox language and English. So therefore, they have been misplaced and put in a category that they don't have a diagnosis for disability, because that language barrier can be adjusted and dealt with in ELL, or English as a new language. And that's what we want you to get more focus in on. And I'm going to be able to work with any of you that are working with language barriers and trying to break into the district to reevaluate those Black boys that are over-identified in the population of LD and BD, when in fact we know they're speaking Ebonics and we want them to go into another category of learning. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this could be your goal for the whole year. This could be your goal. And find a way to help your children. Don't just place them in special ed and walk away. You're the first advocate. I want to see all you parents out there being an advocate. I've been able to speak to the parent and been an advocate for the parent. And I value the parent highly as the first teacher. I am a certified licensed teacher, K through 8 in Indiana and K through 9 and Illinois. And I implore you to be the first parent, because I want you to become the parent and gain the skills you need. And if you have to be at home with baby, you don't have to have a daycare at home in order to have a business. You can be a family life educator. You could also be an advocate and still run your business from home. I did this while I was at home with my 2-year-old and was breastfeeding. So I'm encouraging all of you to be real parents and become breastfeeders and work from home. You can do it, parents. I know you can. There are lots of things you can do for your home, but the best thing that you will be rewarded for is advocating for your child. You're going to have to go to mediation. Sometimes even due process hearing. You're going to have to jump up and down and cut through the bureaucracy to get the services that your child needs in order to get that child through school and back in the mainstream again. And if your child is misplaced in special ed, go the distance for your child to be properly tested and to be evaluated for a language barrier. And if he is, get him an ELL or her an ELL and get the proper services they need so they can be in the mainstream again. It's very imperative that you hear me, parent. I am so sincere about this. This has been my lifelong work. And I'm even writing right now a book about the effects that females have on Black males. The book is all printed. One thing we're doing is formatting and going through the cover again. I have outline material. I have workbooks and programs for teachers to use that are teaching our African American males. They have no business teaching our African American males without a plan and a program. And don't give me that old worn out special education stuff with your IEP. No, at 4th grade level, our Black boys start to fail. And they're failing because a woman that's a female shouldn't have her hands on that child unless she's team teaching with another male. They cannot sharpen iron. Females don't sharpen iron. Males sharpen iron. And we must give those boys, the Black boys, over to a male gender teacher. I repeat, we are raising our young girls and loving our boys to death, and we are not offering them enough to put them in the proper perspective so that they can prevail at 4th grade level. They're failing miserably after 4th grade because the curriculum turns from a right brain learning to a left logical way of learning, and they're not prepared for it. And that's one of the things that my training does, is get them prepared for a logical left brain learning and to introduce them to their male counterpart to work with an advocate that is a male. If you cannot bring a male teacher in, at least bring one into the school district so they can have a mentor. But it's very vital that we understand this is serious business, parent. You got too many children in the pipeline that are on their way to prison because they failed 4th grade, and that they didn't fail, we failed them because we didn't get them the proper administration of a male teacher by the time they was 4th grade. Do you know they plan for these prisons by the time they look at 3rd grade level readings? If they're not reading at 3rd grade, they can predict that those 3rd graders are going to need a prison cell, so they plan for it strategically through the failure of those kids that are 3rd grade who can't read. And we've got to get up on our high horses and realize that we have the capability of advocating for our children. I've seen some mothers advocate from the day their child comes in kindergarten all the way up until they graduate. They never give up. You're the first parent, teachers, and you have to get out there and be a spokesperson for your child. And don't let me down after me giving you all this information, showing you that you can set up a parent resource center. There are instructions. There's like 17 or 18 booklets that will give you ability to walk yourself through the procedure in setting up these parent resource centers. This is the way we gain our communities back again. This is how you set up your house in a community or in a location that you can rent, or the library one day a month, where you can have gatherings and bring people back together in community again. We must reestablish community. We must have a place place we can meet up with parents to talk about the issues of these overtaxic, toxic special education department, because it's a way of doing separate and unequal. They're not getting the same learning and training as the regular ed mainstream children. We must know that. And you just can't put your child on special ed and walk away and think that that's the end of it and wipe your hands with the situation. You got to do better than what you're doing. And we want you to understand that. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you. And we do look forward to talking with you soon. You've been listening to Maddie Harvey's Baby Sister, and we're talking about setting up parent resource centers and becoming a co-parent resolutionist for your children. Stay tuned. Au double.